Daniel chapter 7. Take a big deep breath, and we're going to go to chapter 8. Are you ready? You guys ready? You guys good online? I can't see, I'll assume.
Yes.
All right. I know we're jumping through a lot, but what we're going to see here in just a minute is we're going to see that these images are paralleled, and that when Daniel has these dreams, he keeps seeing similar things, and there's like this constant weaving that happens where the imagery is similar, but then it builds. And the next vision he has, there's some of the same imagery, but then it builds. And the next vision he has, there's some of the same imagery, and then it builds, right? Remember how we talked about the word then? How we were like, I'm going to take a road trip to Dallas, and the road trip is boring, and then I'll make calls because I don't have anything else to do. Versus, I'm going to take a road trip to Dallas, I'm going to really have to keep my eyes on the road because there's so much traffic, and then I'll end up making phone calls. We're talking about how then can mean something that happened when I was talking about something behind me, and I'm referencing back in time, or then can be something that's sequential that happens forward in time. And the only way that we know the difference between that then and that then is by the context that it's being used in, right? So one of the things that we learn here in Daniel, we see this quite a bit in Daniel, is where the picture is painted and then he goes back and fills it in. And the picture is painted and he goes back and he fills it in, right? So like an example of that, Daniel sees the dream. I saw the dream, there was a lion, had wings, verse 3, verse 4, verse 5, another beast like a bear, verse 6, had another one like a leopard, verse 7, after this I saw the next one, he was terrible, and he was diverse from all the other one, and it had 10 horns, and I considered the 10 horns, verse 8, and there was one that came up among them, and it had eyes and a mouth. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, the Ancient of Days came, his wheels were like burning fire. Verse 10, a fiery stream issued, and he was set, and the book was open. Verse 10, in the book. The judgment was set, the books were open. We've reached the end of the age. The judgment was set, the books were open. Now what does Daniel say in verse 11? He goes back in time. I beheld then because the voice that spoke the great words of the horn. So he's looking now, he's going back and he's saying, okay, we've gotten to the end of the time, the books are open, the judgment is written, and oh, by the way, let's go back and let's talk about the horn some more. Right? So he's like, then, right? There's the then behind us in verse 11. So he's laying this whole thing down. It's like this chronological stream of thought. He gets to the end of it and he goes, okay, let's go back here and talk about this now. Verse 10, he talks about the horn, talks about the great words. Talks about how the dominion was taken in verse 12. Oh, there it is, verse 13. I saw in the night visions, behold, one like the Son of Man came in the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days. That's the verse I was looking for before. That's how we know that Jesus is not the Ancient of Days, because the one that looked like the Son of Man came to the Ancient of Days in verse 13. And it says they brought him near to him. They brought the one that looked like the Son of Man near to the Ancient of Days. And there was given to who? The Son of Man, dominion, glory, and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages would serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, his kingdom that which will not be destroyed. Those are the verses I was looking to before and I couldn't find them. So we know from verse 13 that Jesus is not the Ancient of Days. So we get to verse 15 and he's like, I was grieved. I came near to ask him what it meant. And so then they go all the way back to the top of the story and start all over again. So we go through it. We go back here, we go down through it, now we go back to the top and we go through it again, right? So we're going to see this pattern of discuss and go back and fill in, discuss and go back and fill in, discuss and go back and fill in. We're going to see that through the rest of Daniel. All right? Verse 8. This is a fun one. I go on record as stating I like Daniel chapter 8. It's one of my favorite chapters. Just fun. We're going to actually, as we're going through this here, it won't take long to get through it. We're going to read, and I don't know that I'll do it exactly the same way. We'll probably talk about this one as we go through it. In the third year of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, even to me, Daniel, after which appeared unto me at the first. Well, what was it that appeared to him at the first? It was the first year of King Belshazzar. Now we're in the third year, so Daniel chapter 7 and Daniel chapter 8 are 2 years apart. We read them like they're just back-to-back experiences, but 2 years of life has happened in Daniel's life. He's now in the third year of King Belshazzar. And I saw, verse 2, I saw in the vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in the vision, and there was by the river Ulai. And I lifted up my eyes, and I saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. The 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. Again, what do we say? The beasts are kingdoms, and the horns are what? Kings, right? Verse 4, I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that the beast might stand before him, and neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will, and became great. And as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west, of the face of the whole earth, didn't touch the ground. In other words, this thing's coming like a rocket. Like Sonic the Hedgehog. Nobody got that either. I give up. I give up. I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, southward, that no beast might stand before him. Verse 5, I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west over the face of the whole earth, and he touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Horn means what? King. Say that again. King, yes. Between his eyes. What's that, Sean? What did you say? Oh, you're on mute. I thought you said something. Let's see here. Had a notable horn between his eyes. Verse 6. And he came to the ram that had the 2 horns, which had been standing before the river, and he ran into him with the fury of his power. I saw him come close to the ram, and he was moved with anger against him. He smote the ram, and he broke his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver him out of his hand. Therefore the he-goat, waxed very great. And when he was strong, the great horn, which means a king, was broken. And for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. And out of one of them came forth a little horn. Where did we hear little horn before? Daniel chapter 7, right? So we have 4 beasts, parallel. We have now a little horn. It waxed exceedingly great toward the south. Now we're given directions. This is interesting. Waxed exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. Pleasant land would be the whole area, the Mesopotamian area, be the area we would now know probably as Israel, Judah, that whole area, the pleasant land. It waxed great even to the host of heaven, the angelic host. God himself, he waxed great to the point of accelerating himself to the host of heaven. And he cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground and stamped on them. He magnified himself even to the prince of the host, Jesus himself. And by him the daily sacrifice, the word tamid, T-A-M-I-D, or T-A-M-Y-I-D, depending on how you look at it. T-A-M-I-D, it's a very important word. One of the key words to understand for end times prophecy, tamid. So if you don't have that written down someplace, make sure that you write it down. Because the tamid is, it's called, you're going to see it called daily sacrifice. And when you see in Daniel the daily sacrifice, it's the Hebrew word tamid. The reason I'm drawing it out is because the tamid is the morning and the evening ritual of worship. It's not just the sacrifice. It's the actual worship ritual. It's the singing, the songs, the presentation of offerings to the Lord, the gifts of music, dance, the arts. It's the whole worship experience that happens in the morning and in the evening. It's the tamid.
It's also sacrifice, everything.
It can include the sacrifice, yes. Multiple facets. But you're going to see the morning, you're going to see the daily sacrifice, but it's not just the sacrifice. When it says sacrifice, it's a sacrifice of praise. It's the sacrifice of grain, the sacrifice of animals. It's the sacrifices of worship experience that happen in the morning and that happen in the evening. It's very important.